Welcome to Becoming Spiritual, a podcast about the magic that surrounds us and has always been a part of us. I'm your host, Heather Dolan, a passionate seeker dedicated to bringing together beautiful humans who are doing amazing things in this world. Together, we will explore healing modalities and practical spiritual practices that can enrich your everyday life. We will also hear stories of awakenings, many from people in the corporate world who have broken out of the spiritual closet. Wherever you are in your journey, know you have found a community of open-hearted individuals committed to making themselves and our world a better place. Welcome home. Today, I sit down with Stephanie Schafer. I'm going to share a little bit about Stephanie in a minute, but this conversation is so magical because it's filled with earth magic, plant magic. We talk about so many different things, but the beautiful thing is the practical knowledge, how we can tap into everything that is tangible, that is around us, to realize what the earth is giving us every day without asking for anything, how we can create a symbiotic relationship with whether it's trees or plants or flowers or just what is in our physical space. Because I know a lot of times, a lot of things that we talk about on this podcast can feel too etheric, can't be seen, can't be felt. And in this episode, we're going to dive into those things that can be seen, that can be felt through plants and the spirits of the trees and all the magic that's within that. So hopefully you love this. I received so many beautiful messages and lessons that everything around us is always trying to teach us and show us, and in a beautiful and loving, seen, heard, felt way. So hopefully you will find a beautiful lesson too in this episode. So Stephanie is a spiritual practitioner deeply influenced by a Roman Catholic upbringing and a lifelong passion for history, mythology, and folklore. Her path is rooted in the sacred energies of the earth, the serpent, the moon, spirits, and the divine. Her garden is her temple, where she cultivates the herbs and flowers used in her creations. Her kitchen is her altar, where transformation and magic come to life. With a background in psychology, biology, and nursing, Stephanie brings a grounded, integrative approach to her craft, honoring the harmony between the physical and the spiritual realms. Her work is designed to inspire connection, healing, and transformation, helping others turn their homes and lives into sacred spaces. Stephanie's mission is to guide others in discovering magic that lies within themselves and the world around them. So beautiful. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I hope you receive all the magic that's around you and that is coming through in this transmission. So thank you for joining us, and let's dive in. So Stephanie, welcome to Becoming Spiritual. I'm so happy to have you here.
I am very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I know we're going to talk about so many magical things today, including plant magic, which is just, makes my heart so happy. But before we do that, I want to just get to know you a little bit so our listeners can get to know you and all the amazing things you're doing in the world. So first, could you share with our audience who you are?
My name is Stephanie. I currently live in southern New Jersey. I am an avid gardener. I run the Serpent and the Dove with my sister, Elizabeth. That is a community where we provide the container, the education, the experience for people to really navigate their own relationship with themselves, with the divine, with the worlds around them. However that looks for them. There's a lot of earth magic involved in there. There is a lot of spirituality and source and creation, but really that passion of getting to experience our relationship with spirit, with, like I said, the divine, with the creator, with themselves, the earth, like all the different ways that we can get in touch with that, as opposed to the people that come to us are usually looking for something different with their spirituality. They're looking for something that's more fulfilling. So kind of helping people, being a companion on that path. We definitely encourage and empower you to do it yourself, right? Magic is an intimate relationship. Your craft, whatever it is, it's for you to not even learn about, but feel and be a part of and tap into your own personal relationship with whatever it is that you're looking for in that spiritual realm. So that's what we do, like at the Serpent and the Dove. That's how I met you. I spend most of my time in the garden. I do a lot of earth-based magic and a lot of, elemental. I'm also a bedside nurse. I work at a hospital. I'm a mother. I have 3 children who I love, and bringing them up in this path for whatever they're available for. So, I mean, that's a little bit about me.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And in your words, you say your mission is to guide others in discovering the magic that lies within themselves and the world around them, which I think
Oh,
is so beautiful. And I do see that. I mean, the small amount of time I've spent with you and Beth at the Maybon retreat that I attended last year,
yes.
you have a very symbiotic relationship, which I can appreciate. I love seeing all the magic both of you bring. So I'm curious in terms of earth magic, what that means to you.
I am naturally drawn to the earth. I remember I was the kind of kid who sat in trees all the time. Like I was always in my mom's yard and I was making potions with sticks and leaves and that kind of thing. And honestly, even leaving offerings out to, whatever I had going on in my wild imagination when I was little. So I do think that sometimes as kids, we're inclined to certain parts of, life and our existence. When we get older, we kind of get lost in corporate and school and family and all that other kind of stuff. But, whatever you're really pulled to as a kid is like a really good indicator of where spirit speaks to you, and we always say that spirit will always talk to you in your own language. And I think for me, I really kind of solidified it. I came to this point in my life where I did everything right. I got the college degree and I got married and I had my kids and I had the house and I was doing everything right. And I was just so lost, right? I'm still married and, I love my children. I don't regret any of that. But it was just this sense of not being fulfilled, right? This sense of I checked everything off the list, but I was still so lost and I didn't have a good relationship. I didn't have a good understanding of even who I was at that point, after I had my first child. And it was just like this huge, it hit me in the face. I like a ton of bricks, all those changes. I think becoming a mom and a wife, it was like, oh, well, where'd Stephanie go?
Mhm.
And that's very much present in folklore, this death of the maiden and becoming the mother, right? We gloss over that, but I was no longer. And it was just this passion to get back to who I was. And for me, like earth magic, the soil, for me, the earth, I can touch it and it's accessible. I think these messages from the divine, these lessons from spirit of creator, for me, are too abstract. They're too far away. That's just not my jam. That's not how I get in touch with spirit. But when I'm in my garden, when I am crying under the moon at that point, when I am going for walks in the woods and just sitting there and being quiet and listening and paying attention to the seasons and having my hands in the soil, all those messages of the creator, of the divine, that's where it comes through for me. So, and I think anything that you can find in this dark sky where all things are possible, where all things come from and all things return, I think the exact same is true in the soil, right? It is this dark, rich, fertile soil where all things come from and all things return. All of these lessons of the elements and this change of the seasons and the life, death, and rebirth cycle and how the relationship between everything, that has been my greatest teacher and guide along the way. So to me, that is really treating the earth as sacred, that our bodies and the physical place that we exist in are not something to get away from. They're not something to purify. They're not, oh, I'm going to just hopefully get to this better place after I leave here, that this is sacred, that this experience is sacred, that every breath is sacred, all of that. So, I lean to that earth magic because it's just much more accessible to me. I don't know if many people find such divine inspiration when they're weeding in their garden, but I do, right? That is my church. I just love it. So,
I
yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
And I think it's so beautiful to acknowledge that and honor that because we do get so distracted. We see all the things on social media and everything outside of us. And so I love just the purity of how you describe earth magic. Like you can literally just be hands in the soil,
Yes.
just sitting there processing anything, grief,
Hmm.
excitement, trying to maybe work through something. Like, I'm sure there's that grounding element to it, but also just the way you're making space to be open, like no expectations. No one's having expectations when they're out there weeding their garden, thinking like, oh God, give me a message. Let it come down right now on me. You're not. you're doing something that you love. You feel called to go work in the garden with your hands and be in the soil or be walking in the woods. And that's when you're so open to receive because you don't have expectations. You're not in this pressure cooker of like, okay, I'm going to sit and do this meditation and I hope I have a really amazing experience and I get some mind blowing message that I can then go do a video and share with 100
Yeah.
people. So I want to stop and honor that so much because I think we're just too pulled away from ourselves. And so everything you're talking about is just coming back to self, and especially how you're relating it to your childhood of all the things you love to do and going back to that space and finding yourself in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the patience and the quietness and the stillness is definitely a lesson that I have learned from being intentionally in tune with the earth, right? This thing where like I have to do all of this stuff. You can't. You got to wait until it's the right time to put that seed in the ground. You have to wait until it's warm enough. You got to wait until like all of those things. So it really puts into perspective of like, it's going to happen, but you can't do it all kind of thing. It's definitely taught me the sense of patience and devotion to one practice. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's so funny because what came in for me was patience, which I think this day and age, there's like almost no tolerance for patience. Like we have no patience because we know we can order something online and somehow it will get delivered to our door in a couple of hours. And I see my kids, I'm guessing you might see it with your kids. That's their expectation is like, well, when's it going to be here? Like by dinner time? And it's like, this is mind boggling. I just feel like that concept of patience and what you were saying about the planting the seed and really sitting with that as it's in the ground developing and just I'm like picturing that in my mind and how beautiful it is because my first thought is like, oh, great. Well, I'm going to plant that seed and then I'm going to go do 10 other things because I know it's probably going to come up at like around this time. So I'll be available for that. But I'm going to shove in a couple other things while I'm waiting for it. And instead of saying, this is it, I'm going to sit with this beautiful seed and wait to see as it maybe pops through the ground for the first time. And the problem is because of the way probably that I'm wired, I think I'm going to come back and be able to see that first shoot and I probably miss it because I'm distracted with all the other things. I put too much in. And so I miss some of that beauty. So I just love that you're sharing that of being able to stick with one thing because I think it's not only patience, but also reverence and honoring.
Yes, it's definitely like a devotional act because working in cycles and working in seasons, right? That seed, you can translate that into anything, any project, any life, any desire, any intention. And especially like in a spiritual practice, I think it is this idea a lot in the beginning of like, I'm going to take and I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to have my altar and I'm going to have my daily practice and I'm going to do everything right, right? Like I did in the beginning with I'm going to go to school and I'm going to get good grades and do all the things right on the checklist. And there's no time for devotion, right? There's no time to devote to truly immersing yourself in that practice, to truly immerse yourself in magic and connection. And, the beauty that happens when, and this is like very pertinent for right now with this Pisces Virgo eclipse and season that we're in, this face of surrender with Pisces and control with Virgo, this need to plan and map everything out and make sure that foundation is perfect. It will not crack everything. Like that's good. We do need to plan, right? You can't have one without the other. But really leaving space for Pisces to come in and Beth would say, leave room for the Holy Spirit, right? Like things are going to change and shift and things are going to not work out the way you planned, right? Like there's going to have to be times of waiting and all of those other things. So I think it's super important, especially when you're starting out in a spiritual practice. There's so many options that you're not giving yourself the chance to really immerse yourself in those lessons and understanding. Because even when someone teaches you something, like you can learn it, but like if you don't know it and feel it in your bones and you experience and you have like that, oh, that's what it means. Oh, I felt that, right?
Yeah.
You don't really know that. Like, and I feel like we don't sometimes with new practitioners, they don't give themselves the chance to be fully immersed in something and give it the love and appreciation and awe and yourself the time to experience it, right? It's just like moving on to the next thing.
Yeah. And I actually am literally writing down devotion because I think, I think for me, this is like a big aha. And it's come up so much for me lately. I just was talking to a friend last week who I had a beautiful session with him. It wasn't anything deep. It was just he was kind of sharing some messages that had come through. And there was a specific deity. It was Lady Death who was calling to work with me. And he was like, this is very unusual. I did not expect this. And he was like, really interesting. He's like, you need to sit with that. And he said, I don't see like death as in someone's going to die. He was like, but at the same time, he said, she brings change. And it's like the death of many things, of like old patterns and old selves, things that don't serve us any longer. And this was probably at least 6 months ago, if not longer than that. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay. And I kind of did a meditation and called her in and got some messages, but there was no devotion there in terms of sitting and working with her. And I know people sit with some of these. I know we spoke briefly before about like Hecate.
Mm.
And, you know, if they're coming to us for a reason, to be able to just sit with them. And I think for me, that idea of devotion to really spend time with and not get pulled in other directions of, but oh yeah, I want to tap into this. And yesterday I was like, I haven't opened my Akashic records in a while and gotten any, like, what's going on in there? So it's the constant bombardment, and I do it to myself. And I'm sure there's others out there who are just like, oh my gosh, that's me too. I learned sound healing. And then, oh, there's this Reiki class. So I'm going to go do Reiki now. And
Mhm.
it's like, what happened to the sound healing? So, and I'm the guilty party. And so I'm wondering, thinking about that devotion, how to, it sounds really silly because it's like, how do you sit with it? Like, how, I'm guessing it's over
Yeah,
time.
no, what does that even look like? I know this
Yeah.
is like a favorite thing. I love that you said that because in these spaces and all these words get thrown around. And this is a big part of what me and Beth do, like stand in
Yep.
your power and bring it back to center and feel it in your heart space and all this other kind of stuff. And we're like, what does that mean? Right? Like people don't want to ask that. What does that mean to sit there?
Yep. I'm being very vulnerable. Yeah. Like,
No,
how can I
we do
be
it
more
too.
devoted?
Yeah, no, we do it too. Like we'll be creating courses together and we'll start writing it and it's beautiful. And then we know this from doing this for so long. It's like, what does that mean? Right? If you say you want to stand in your power, what does that mean? And then it's
Yeah.
like, I don't really know what power looks like. Well, yeah. So that's why universe is like, well, what do you want? You're like, I can't actually define it. I don't know. You know what I mean? So I love that you brought that up. That's like I'm like a language girly. I love it. Like, let's define it. Where's the root of this word? Where does that come from? Yeah, like I think when it comes to devotion, this is so serendipitous, talking about instant gratification and distraction, and you can have anything you want whenever you want, and our minds are in a million different places. I think how you do one thing is how you do everything. And for me, this sense of devotion, being present and constantly returning to this relationship that I have. I always say magic is in relationship. It's the space between two things coming together and what can happen in that space.
Mm,
I do a lot of work with the spirit of the soil, what's in there, and then also like the plants and the trees, the seasons, right? How that comes up in different ways. But I have gotten this practice. It was very loud that devotion is relationship, right? Looking at it in that direction, looking at really checking how I have relationships with people in my life and spirit, my relationship with the earth. Is it, you know, do I show up to someone's house and be like, hello, I'm here and I would like to receive your message? Usually not, right? And there are places for that, right? I mean, I'm literally a teacher. You can pay me and I will deliver the message, right? That's a very agreed upon transaction that exists in the spirit world as well. And then you have this idea of relationship and devotion where you have a very long, good, dear friend, right? That nourishes your soul and that is always there for you and that it doesn't have to be structured. And it's somewhere that you've returned to over and over and over again. I don't know why I just made myself choke up a little bit thinking about my garden, but like that's what that is for me. You will always have a place at my kitchen table. Like you are always welcome. For me, that devotion is even in interpersonal relationships, when you like want to care and show someone that you care, you learn about them. You learn what they like. You learn what they don't like. You make their favorite drink for them when they come over. You cook their favorite meal, or you know that they love roses. So you pick up roses for them on the way home from the store. Or, oh, I was thinking about you today. I saw this on my walk and I got this for you. Here you go. Right. It's this constant, I think that gets taught. And then people think like, oh, I have to go to my altar every day and I have to leave an offering every day. And it has to be this herb. And it's not robotic. It's a sense of intimacy where like, I love you and I care about you. And I'm so thankful that you're in my life. And I think about you when I'm not here. And I saw this and I thought you would love it. And I brought it to you. I think that's the sense of devotion, that it's the feeling behind it. It's the intention behind it. And devotion is like, I'm just so grateful you're in my life and I want to share that with you.
It's a relationship. It's a back and forth.
Yes. Yeah. And we're all guilty of this. Treating it as like a list to check off. Like I hit all the spots in this book I bought on green witchcraft. Where's the integrity there? Where's the heart? Where's the actual relationship? Right? Because if somebody came up and did the same thing to you, like I did all the things, like what am I, like a vending machine? Now you're my best friend. Like, you know what I mean? So I think these are all lessons I have learned in the soil where I'm like, whoa, I do that. And it's like, check yourself, girl, come correct, and be honest about what you're doing here. Yeah.
And I like that you used, understanding intentions instead of understanding each other's expectations, because expectation is coming up so much for me. And I just shared one of my daily affirmations is let go of expectations and then watch the universe deliver beyond your wildest dreams. And it's a sometimes hourly practice for me because it's very hard to be in the 3D and in our jobs because there's expectations of us. I love the idea because I do think we put expectation around relationships so often of I'm expecting this from you. And I'll use an example from our conversation before around my tree. And I had expectations. I have a tree, which if any neighbor listens to my podcast, which I don't know if any have, but they have probably at some point seen me standing on our main road, and I am with my tree, this tree that's very special to me and has just called to me. And so when I'm out walking, I always stop and put my hands on it and close my eyes. And sometimes I'm there for a couple minutes. Sometimes I'm only there for a minute, whatever. But as I was sharing with you, I have always, as I started tuning in, even as I'm walking, my streets are tree lined. And so sometimes if I'm running, like I became a runner during the pandemic, which I never was a runner. And so I literally see them and then had like these visions of all these elementals being in the trees, like cheering for me, like I'm running a marathon in my neighborhood and just like cheering me on, like, go you, you're in your power and doing something for yourself. And it was such a release for me, but it was hard. Like it was hard physically for me. And it felt like I had this cheering team going along every road that I ran on, that these trees and beings were like cheering for me in some other dimension, which people are going to think that sounds crazy. So anyway, I have my tree. Anytime I'm in nature around trees, I am always just sending them love or receiving love. And I said to you, like, sometimes I go to my tree and I've gotten some incredibly profound messages. And sometimes it's just a feeling where I'll get like an electric something. And I know that something's happening. They're grounding me or helping me as I am working through something, integrating something. And sometimes I go and I, want to have this relationship and like a conversation. And if I feel like I'm not getting anything back, I'm like, oh no, my trees left me. like you would feel in a relationship of like, Stephanie, we're having coffee and I feel like I'm talking and you're not talking to me. What's wrong? And it's like feeling that like, what's wrong? And you said this beautiful thing to me of sometimes that stillness is the message and being able to sit in just be like the being with it. And I realized that I had this expectation of what my relationship was with my tree and getting something every time I went there because I would go like with my heart open and I'm just giving it so much love and all these things. But I had an expectation. And so again, vulnerable share, when I go, I actually have to remind myself. I have to like unwind that because that it's just who I am. It's going to like take a while for me to unwind that.
It does take a while, and not like the Buddha here, either when it comes to that. But, I think for me, that was a big lesson of making sure that my intention was clear from the beginning, right? when my intentions are very clear, that opens up an opportunity for, right, spirit relationships. What is the intention, right, with a lot of these relationships? Is it just to feel magic? Is it just to feel and be aware of this world of other? That's okay, right? That's like a beautiful reminder that we're not alone. Even that, making sure that you have that intention of what is my goal of creating a relationship with this thing. I think that for me, that has revealed a lot about myself. And I also find that anytime that my intention or attention goes outside of me, that's when manipulation happens. That's when like mistakes happen. Going back to the expectation, we all know this. We learn this all the time. I can only control myself, right? I can only control how I behave and how I show up and what I'm doing. So if I make sure that I'm in alignment with my intention, then things usually go my way, right? And how I want them to go, relationship or not. It's when I start focusing on something outside of me that things go awry, right? And then also having that integrity of being like, we are not in alignment with my intention. I love you, love that for you, but this is not for me. That's a big other part of spirit work, knowing when I'm not available for that kind of thing. So, yeah, definitely intention versus expectation. Huge part of magic. And like you said, like those things come together and leaving room for that magic to happen. I think it's that Virgo and Pisces again, where like I'm expecting this to happen. So you're missing, right, the magic that's being offered to you. Yes. And you're like disappointed because, oh, it didn't work out like I thought. And like spirit's like, no, 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 no. I was trying
Yeah.
to change up the narrative and you're like missing it. Yeah.
That's like that parable about what is it, like someone's standing there, there's a flood and someone's like on the roof of their house and praying to God, please send me a way to get off the roof. And someone comes by with a boat and they're like, come on, get in the boat. And he's like, no, I'm waiting for God. Like, I'm good. And then, sends. And then the guy dies and says to God, like, what happened? I prayed and asked for help. And he's like, I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. I sent you whatever. And you didn't
You missed it.
because you have this expectation of
Mhm.
how you think it should be. You miss all the things around you. So I'm curious, how did you get to this place? So you've already shared a little bit about, realizing when you were little and being so connected to nature and trees and all of those things. And now being on the other side and later in life and reconnecting and picking that up. But what does that look like for you in terms of that journey?
Well, I will say when it came to the spirits, like human spirits, they were always around and it was never, oh, you're crazy. Like it was just very real. It was finite. Like things exist, ghosts exist or whatever you want to call them. So it was very normal to me. I think Catholics in general, right? Like they're definitely a world of angels and demons. It's not like a metaphor, right? They exist. So I grew up in this very finite world where that was a thing. So when I got married and had kids, it was a lot for my husband. He wasn't raised with anything and he could care less what I do. Like it's not, a big deal. He doesn't poo-poo anything, but they were always present and they were sometimes heavy or sad or depressed. And I never really dealt with them. It was just a part of life. And then one in particular at my old house, I was ignoring. And she ended up bothering one of my kids. So it was just like this whole thing. And I was just like, I really need to get myself together. Like, you know what I mean? And I think that was that time where I was in the space of transition and loss, right? Transition, those thresholds when two worlds meet, like it's like the doorway is open. That was like a huge sign for me to get it together. So really my magic, this intentional connection took place because I realized that I was no longer just me. And I had to make sure that my house was mine. It was protected, that there was boundaries and integrity, and that I was in charge of that space, that things are not allowed to come in and move around me. So a lot of that happened because of that incident, which worked out very well. Everybody's fine. And I think coming from that, dealing with human spirits, something I had emailed you about, like all magic for me, earth based is local, right? There's ley lines, there's key lines, fairy lines, there's folklore and tradition. But where I live, the land that I'm on, where my house is, my home, my fireplace, the trees in my yard, the plants that grow near me, the earth is our closest physical representation of spirit, right? And plant spirits and tree spirits and all of that kind of stuff. So utilizing and creating a relationship where I was like, all right, here I am. Here I am, guys. I know I've been really passive about this, but I'm going to be very active now. And like, this is what I need. This is what we're doing. This is my intention. Where do I go from here? Kind of like figuring this out, where I definitely enlisted the trees on my property. I definitely enlisted the plants around my home, and I definitely planted certain plants, and I definitely showed up as someone worthy of them to work with as well, because I had a pure intention and a good heart. I am worthy of you to work with. I will tend this land. I will take care of it. I will love it and nourish it and nurture it. I will have my children's laughter along with, we will all be together kind of thing. So utilizing the land and the spirits that existed in the soil, the trees, and all of that earth and plant material world around me, that's who I kind of went to, which a lot of people, would have went to like a Archangel Michael, right? They would have went to like this higher up source. But for me, it just clicked that these spirits are here in the physical, right? They're with me here. So I need something very close, right, that I can work with as well to assist me and teach me and how to navigate that as well. Not that like having an oak tree is going to solve all your problems, but there was a lot of messages and lessons and aha moments that I got from working with the oak tree that helped me to have a stronger practice. So really tapping into that local network of help that was around me. So, I mean, that was like a huge shifting point for me to be focused and intentional and be very declaring about any relationship that was in my life, came out through that.
And so that's so beautiful. So just as you said, you could have gone to Archangel Michael, which lots of
Yeah.
people do to create like protective bubbles and to cut cords and all
Yeah.
those things is, I assume what you meant with that reference.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if someone's like, oh my gosh, yes, I like have these trees and I feel like they sing to me or speak to me, or what would you say would be the first thing someone could do if they want to create that? Meaning some people like me,
Yeah.
want to know, like, as I'm thinking about like protections I've put on my own property with different things, I've never enlisted like all the trees and plants to participate in that.
If you're interested in working like locally with the land that you're on, I would learn the folklore of the trees, learn the folklore of, are these native plants? Are these invasive species? That's a whole thing, learning what you're surrounded by, learning what they're for and how you can work with them and like all of the mythology that goes along with it. And then there's the real world, right? Like walnuts are good for your brain, right? Like there's that. But, looking at like that walnut tree as like, how does that go even further? You know what I mean? Like this connection to intelligence, this connection to nourishing thought, this connection to like walnut trees in Italian folk magic are usually where they would go for the witch's Sabbath. They didn't call it that in Italy, but this tree like a portal to tap into this knowledge of the world of other, right? Like very telling with the walnut that looks like a brain when you crack it open kind of thing. And in order to get those aha moments, you do have to be present. You have to look at how the bark grows and being available and being observant. Research always helps, right? Having a starting point and what to look for. But I also think like when you have that devotional aspect of caring for and loving the land that you're on, not just the beauty part of it, having like a nice manicured lawn, which is gorgeous. We don't want snakes and rats in our yard. There's nothing wrong with that. But leaving this space of, if I'm so controlling with this earth, I'm not letting anything grow here. Like for me, that was like, oof, why isn't something growing here? Like we do abundance work all the time and it's like the whole yard is nothing but a grass. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing growing here. It's like so symbiotic. I think a lot of it's about shifting the perspective. The earth has been here for millions of years. The soil is full of love and heartache and passion and jealousy and betrayal. Like all of that is buried into the earth. All of the bones of everybody that's lived here before and the animals and the decaying plants. And like all of those memories, all of anything that you could ever imagine is in the soil, and it pops up in all of these different ways. One of the messages I got was when we bury our dead, we think of the spirit leaving the body. Sometimes I was taught, and the body is it's gone, right? There's no need for the body anymore. And we focus on where the spirit goes. But the body is just as important, and it decomposes and it grows back as like that lavender bush, right? It grows back as a part of that wild rose. And it's like, who's in there? It was just so gorgeous. And the earth has always been a teacher for folk practitioners, you know,
Yeah.
um, celebrating and loving all of it, the changes of the seasons. And it's like romantic to think that you would come back in like a plant way, like, and not your whole essence. I'm not here to debate the 7 bodies or whatever, but that part, there's like a memory there. I don't know, I think it's beautiful.
It is when you explain it that way.
I think for me, that was a mind shift. It was the change in how I interact. And I thought, oh, there's a whole world of people out here that I haven't even introduced myself to,
Yeah.
And I think starting small is beautiful.
Yeah. Like going out, and I just had like this vision of, having this journal that's just devoted to my property and starting like, okay, this tree. And do you name things, or do they share names with you, I should say?
Yeah, I think sometimes there's like different levels of relationships, right? You can just have the devotion. You don't ever even need to go past that. And I think being quiet and being present, having a journal, there's like so many weird epiphanies that I have in my garden that just come from being present out there and seeing how things interact and the colors and all of that kind of stuff, and how things grow and how the earth takes care, and the different plants and all of the different stuff. And like, you can't have one type of tomato plant. You need to have mixtures. You need to have pollinators. You need to have flowers. I'm like, oh, just like people. We can't just have one version, right? There has to be like the rainbow and all that kind of stuff. And then there's like deeper relationships where it's the plant spirit in general. Like, you can have a relationship with Rose. She's present everywhere. She's like a portal to another world, like this embodiment of otherworld energy with the crown jewel and the thorns and the leaves. And I could talk about Rose forever. That's the thorn and the rose is just like could be a path in just of itself. And then there's like that specific rose bush outside my house, right? Where we're bringing it down even smaller. And then it's like the relationship between us. And in that way, with that specific plant, I would ask if they wanted to share their name with me. Or, oftentimes it might be a name, and other times I can feel like a shift in the air or presence where you may not hear it, but it's like my attention is pulled over there, right? And instead of like blowing it off, I'm like, oh, she's calling me. Like,
just sit there with it.
Yeah, sit there with her. Let me make sure there's no debris around her. And, maybe clip off some dead leaves and fertilize her and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm curious how you feel about weeds, because I struggle, because where one person sees a weed, there's beauty. And I got my 12-year-old for her birthday. There's a local artist who does beautiful like nature photography here. And there's a picture of a dandelion like willow. I don't know. It's like the dandelion when it's the big poof that, as kids, you run around picking up and blow and you make a wish. And the thing is we don't have these beautiful little poofy willow things to make a wish on if we pull out all the dandelions, because that's what they become. Yeah. And I tried to tell one of my kids this they're like, oh, that's just a weed. And I was like, no, it becomes this beautiful wishing flower if we let it stay. And so I got my daughter that picture. And what I wrote to my daughter was, some people will look at this and see it as a weed, but I see it as a portal and a wish of you can have whatever, and kind of that beauty on both sides with different perspectives. So I struggle now sometimes thinking about what's deemed a weed and what I take out versus what I allow, because then at some point it overgrows and can choke things. And, like I look at my trees and I know there's vines growing that will choke them if you don't care for them. So there's like a bit of struggle of like the nature and what do you nurture and like weeds. So I'm just curious, like that's going down a rabbit hole, but I'm curious, how do you see them?
So it's, this is that shift for me. Like I was saying, with how you look at your garden and the earth and getting those messages from it. Like, it doesn't have to be this bombastic conversation. And even for me, like I was expecting like this grimoire magic, like spirit, you know what I mean? Like TV show kind of thing. But weeding, right? What is my intention? To have a garden, right? These weeds are interfering with my intention, right? Like, is this my space? So I think there's something to be said about boundaries, right? Like there can be weeds over here. And this is actually a big thing in folklore. So you would have like your farm and then you would leave it like the devil's plot, they called it. It was a plot of area that they did not touch. It was overgrown. It was full of weeds. There was snakes in there, like bugs, like all of that kind of stuff. And it was kind of like, all right, you can have this wild area and I will not interfere with it, but this is mine. And I think reflecting on that and sitting with it, it's like, oh, there's boundary work coming up. There's control work coming up. There's surrender coming up. Is there a place for both in my yard? You know, all of these things where I'm like, I never even thought about reflecting on boundary work. Like to me, weeds are boundary work, you know? So having that lot that's kind of overrun, I don't have grass, right? My whole yard is purple nettle, mugwort, dandelions, cat's ear, right? We mow it, you know, but like that's what's underneath it. I don't have grass seed. My chickens dig up a lot of stuff anyway, but I had mugwort come in and I was like so excited. And I was like, oh, yes, like witchy herb of the year. Like, come on, mugwort. Like, love that. When you hear about mugwort, it travels in dreams and it goes far and it's very like good at anchoring your magic and it's there. And once it's in, and I was like, oh, here's mugwort in real life. I cannot get it out of my yard. It's super invasive. It grows underground. Like the roots travel real far and wide. And mugwort pops up everywhere, no matter what I do. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Why you're used in dream magic. That makes sense why you're used to send things, right? Because you can do it hidden. But when it comes to leading, I think it's boundary work. I'm available for you to do your thing over there, and I'm going to do my thing over here. And what I say goes in my house. You know what I mean? But leaving space for movement, right? It's like that delicate balance and dance of how much do I control and how much do I let go? And then what needs to even be controlled and what doesn't, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So I'm curious for you, like, as you curate your garden, do you grow food and herbs?
The consumerism part of witchcraft really bothered me. And when you're working with a herb or a crystal or anything in like spell work, right? The reason you have it present is so that the spirit in there can help your work, right? We all get dressed and look our best when we go for an interview. We get all our tools out of the closet. Same thing as spell work. I'm going to call in some old friends and we're going to like elevate this together. So it's definitely that spirit and the essence inside of that you're working with. And this is definitely from a place of privilege that I could plant instead of buying, right? And that was like a big call that I had. I wanted to grow these plants so that I could work with them later. And instead of buying them en masse on Amazon, right? And there is nothing wrong with that. There is a lot of very good magic that happens from using herbs from your spice cabinet, right? Rosemary is rosemary. It's in your kitchen. I think if I were to work with the rosemary from my kitchen, well, it's from my garden, but before that, it would have been, you know, kind of setting some aside. Given that I'm such a weird plant lady, it has been traumatized a little bit, and especially even crystals, right? Ripped from the earth, no consent, no boundaries, no regard for, you know, the effect that it has on the earth around us and toxins leaching into the water and the destruction that a lot of these agricultural practices have. That's a whole other conversation. You know, what energy am I pulling into my spell work? And that was a big call to plant things, I will say.
You mean like plant, like from a seed?
Herbs, perennials are hard to start from seed. Some of them. Lavender is hard to start from seed. There's nothing wrong with going to your local, you know, nursery and picking up some plants. I do all the time. I love my plant guy up the street. Green Tree Greenhouse. I love him in Elmer. But yeah, to me, that was a big part of, because I had such a relationship with the spirits around my house. I just knew that like, and again, that's like from a place of privilege that I had the property and the time and money to invest in gardening, because gardening's not cheap. I mean, planting a rosemary bush is pretty cheap, right? But knowing that it was like there in the yard where my kids play, and we decorate the herb bed for the holidays, and the kids sit near it and they draw sidewalk chalk on the bricks around it. You know what I mean? Like it's a part of our family at that point. So how much more powerful am my spell work? That was a big part of that. And then I just got so obsessed with being outside and gardening. Like when somebody wants to come talk to me, they got to find me in the garden, and it turned into food. We have our chickens, we have meat chickens and we have egg chickens. Again, like that energetic exchange, even the poor little chickens. And again, like I said, that's privilege, to be able to have chickens in my yard. But it did. I grow a lot of food. I have a huge garden right now, a lot. So I freeze a lot of my food. I make a lot of tinctures and infused oils and soaps. And I do a lot with the herbs for my garden and the food. I give a lot of the food as offerings to the tree line in the back of my yard, to the spirits of the land, a little thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I grow all sorts of things. Rose bushes, I have a lot of them. Hydrangeas, I love as well. A lot of things. They're just like all over. So, yeah.
And how much property do you have? I'm just curious.
I have 3.5 acres.
Okay.
So,
That's a good amount of.
it is a good amount. It's
Yeah.
manageable. An acre is a good amount. You would be amazed at how much you can get out of a 4x8 raised bed. And herbs, I only have 2 sage bushes, clary sage. I have more sage than I could ever use in a lifetime from one bush. You know what I mean? So I have bundles. I'm looking at my den right now all over the place. I make a lot of bundles. Like I said, I do a lot of like infused oils with them and things like that. And to me, it's very much about like, this sage is a part of my home,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So, yeah.
It's just so beautiful how you can take it from the very beginning and like you were saying how it's a part of your family, and I
Yeah.
just never thought of it that way. Like when I think of the area that's by my driveway where like my kids play and stuff, and that's where I have lavender and I have sage and
Yeah.
I have mint, but that was a mistake because of course it like
Yeah.
very invasive, and so I
Mhm.
had to pull out a lot of it, which I felt so guilty about. And I was like, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." Like every time I was like,
You can't be here.
I have mint that I planted," and people are like, "Oh, you planted mint in the ground?" And I was like, "Yeah."
I know.
Didn't
I have
know.
mint in my ground. I have lemon balm in the ground too. Oregano is the same way. And I will, like, at the end of the year, I rip out 90% of the plant. And then
Uh-huh.
like that sucker will come back anyway.
Yep.
Like the mint, it'll come back. So I rip out probably like 90% of it when I'm done.
Yeah, and I was trying so hard. I was, like, texting people, like, "I had to pull all this mint out, like, do you want some fresh mint, and can
Yeah,
you come
yeah.
get it?" Like, I can't use enough, like, I made this vat of mint tea, but I was like, "How much
Yes.
more mint can I use?" And
Yes.
so I was trying to, like, give it away, and I brought some out to the back where it's all untouched property and offered some to the land, and we have about a dozen plus no, we probably have about 20 deer that live in the back,
Oh,
and so I'll bring out other fruits and things like that for them, which my neighbors, if they're listening, are not going to appreciate because everyone thinks we have a deer problem, which I see them as our very magical friends, and I want to care for them. It's like having that life and experience of experiencing your family, but then even when it's time at the end of the season, you're still able to bring it into your home and still have it be a
mhm.
part of it dried. Or if you do choose to give it away, that now it's part of someone else's home for a
Yeah.
short time. And I just love that vision of how they can live on. And it's not just a transactional, like, it's funny because we have these crazy hydrangea trees. And everyone's like, oh, you should go cut some of them. And I don't feel called to go cut them. And it
Yeah.
probably at this point, I know it'd be healthier for them because they're so huge and heavy. And so I probably need to, but I see them there and I'm like, it would be pretty to have them inside. But at the same time, like I let them just be. Again, it's that devotion to the plants and listening. And yeah, I was saying before, I kind of have this vision of like almost having one like journal to go sit and like spend some time with each kind of thing, which could be a devotional practice for the rest of my life with all the stuff that's out
Yeah.
there.
Taking a leaf and putting it in that devotional journal. And like, I
Mhm.
know it's like I can get real deep about like a leaf, looking at the lines, looking at the change in color. And I just, like I said, I was on that walk with my son and we were looking at the roots and the moss. And I was like, David, as above, so below. Like this is like a network of information. The same with the synapses in our brain and the same with the galaxies in the sky and how everything talks. And
Yeah.
he's like, all right, mom, like, you know what I mean? I'm like,
I just wanted to walk in the woods.
yeah, I'm like, these are the roots. Like, this is exactly what it looks like in our brains when the synapses fire. And I'm like, and this is why witches go into the roots because, I'm learning the knowledge from your world that all of that kind of stuff. But you were talking about your hydrangea trees. We're at the Mabon season again, and I think another hard part that pops up, and it's funny, my girlfriend Jen does a lot of gardening, and she was saying that she has a hard time with this, is the harvest. The harvest is like, oh, it's Thanksgiving, but the harvest is you come in with the scythe, right? It's the Grim Reaper. We are cutting the life, right? You're cutting the wheat. You're cutting all of these things. You're cutting the fruit trees down right now with Mabon. And that's my girlfriend Jen was like, I have a really hard time harvesting. And what's funny is when I first started my garden, I had a very hard time harvesting. I was like, oh my God, this tomato, look how beautiful it is. And look how beautiful this cucumber plant is. And, the harvest was really hard for me. And it was like, well, what was your intention in this garden? Right? Like this spirit served its purpose. This was the intention. You were going to nurture and grow and devote to it. And it was going to receive. Now it's your turn. So like the harvest, it's about me receiving, right? It's am I ready to receive? I devoted all of this work to you. And this spirit, my rosemary, kind of told me off last year. It was like, when are you going to use me? Like, what am I here for? And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. She's like, I am here to make medicine and like hairspray for your scalp and all this other kind of stuff. And she was like, you're just never going to harvest me? What am I here for? And I was like, oh, like I never even thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So that harvest aspect of cutting down, being the Grim Reaper. And it's interesting you brought up Lady Death in the beginning. So to me, like this goddess of death, the mother that gives birth and the goddess of death are both the same person, right? As the gardener, I plant the seed, I nurture it, I watch it grow, I cut off its bad leaves, I make sure the pests aren't getting to it, I plant its best friends next to them, right? I gave it life and I've nurtured it, I've guided it on its way, and I'm also the same one who comes in at the harvest and cuts it down. And right, that duality of the mother and death, they've always been the same goddess, right? We separate them sometimes because it's easier to wrap our heads around. But I also think it's beautiful. Like, your mother kisses you when you come in this world, and she's also the one that kisses you when you go into the next, right? She's there at all of these times of transition. Maybe she is showing up to tell you, I'm going to need you to cut some of these trees down, or like, I'm going to need you to prune these bushes. I had a hard time. One of my rose bushes got completely obliterated with aphids and then like a black mold. And I had to cut her all the way down to the root. And I was like beside myself. And I was like trying to save her so much. And I had to cut it down. And she's back. She's about a foot tall and she's thriving. And I was like, that cycle of death is completely necessary. And it's so prevalent right now at Mabon and in general. Nothing can last forever, right? That impermanence. And I think that's what makes also that devotion so special, because in the garden, it's not going to last forever. And the responsibility of the harvest on top of giving it life.
Oh, that like makes me so emotional because it's
emotional. It's so emotional, the harvest.
I want to cry about the roses. But then you think also, you cut them back so that then they come back even stronger. Like some of the things that if you were to leave it all winter, it might break off and then those branches are gone forever. And maybe the tree might die because I didn't care for it in the way it needed to be cared for, because that felt like it felt hard. So
it is hard. The harvest is hard. And like I said, I'm a nurse as well. I work in the hospital. I work on an intermediate care unit. So, my patients are generally sicker. There's different levels of care in the hospital. And I think death in general in our culture is not talked about often enough, right? So you have the cyclical death of the earth, right? People die. We die, right? We're not comfortable with that. Death is a very taboo topic in our culture. And I see that played out a lot in the hospital, not to get too grim, but people that are suffering and don't want to do this anymore. And the family refuses to let it go. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking and horrible a lot of times for medical staff to continue medical treatment on this person who we know is not going to survive this. And they're in pain. They don't want to be here. But the family, cannot come to terms with the fact that
it's time to let go.
And, it shows up in the garden. It shows up in harvest. It shows up emotionally for us. It shows up when we hold on to relationships too long. It shows up when we hold on to our loved ones too long, right? The universe is screaming at us. No, this has run its course and it's okay, right? Let it go. Yeah. Be comfortable with the harvest. Be comfortable with that. And the fact that we don't do that shows up everywhere.
Yeah, being able to relate that from like
Yeah.
the harvest to, how it plays out in life and being able to see the correlation, how it's mirroring back to us all the time in all the ways. It's not just people, but in the garden and
All
like
the
thinking
ways.
about that.
And
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like when I think about earth magic, that's what I mean. Like I can do something as very simple on a Saturday morning and cut back my rose bush because I tried as hard as I could to save her, right? And I couldn't. And it was heartbreaking and I had to cut it back. And it's like, again, why is this upsetting to me? Right. And how does this show up in other places in my life? What is the lesson? It's never just, I had to cut the rose bush back.
Right.
What lesson is this rose bush teaching me? She is teaching me about the harvest. She's teaching me about when something's not working, put it to bed, have faith, let go, surrender. It's not working anymore. And that was a hard lesson that I am working through, right?
All of us.
All of us.
Literally in that group I was telling you this morning, it was let go, surrender.
Yes.
My friend said to me the other day when I saw her, she's like, you have to drop the reins. Like you
Yeah.
have to let go of the reins. Like you're just pulling. Let them go. Like what's going to happen if you let them go and you just trust?
Yeah.
And it's like, same. And I will say something else that I feel guilty about, and it's probably silly, but when I do have, so I have a rose bush. I've had a couple, but this one that is literally outside where like the dryer vent is and it comes out on it. So it gets heat, which I know they like heat.
Mhm.
And so this one bush is always flourishing, even in the winter, because it has heat all the time. So it's almost like it's in a greenhouse and it's crazy. So everything else is like dormant and it's like beautiful pink roses popping up like all year round. But I can't bring myself to go cut them because people are like, oh, you should cut them and enjoy them in your house. And I'm like, but I want to enjoy it out there. And chances are maybe if I cut it, then I'm sure probably you can tell I'm not a great gardener. More would actually come.
Yes. I was going to say roses love being snipped.
So I should cut them.
Yes, you should cut them. You should, the more you snip your roses, like even like I go out, even if I'm not getting the flowers, snipping just like the outside, like a little tiny bit, like a quarter of an inch, it pushes the bush to like make more. So, going with that lesson, right? Like, what am I here for? What's my purpose? Right. Which I'm not going to answer that on this podcast. I'm not going to answer that. But like a lot of the lessons I got, like I said, my rosemary told me off 2 years ago. I was like, oh, all right, like rough. But, even with these roses in the harvest and bringing them into your home, like what is the purpose of my rose bush? Right. And of course, it's her life. But for me, the lesson that I received from that is like my purpose is to be me and allow me to show up so that others can enjoy that as well. Right. Like there is something to be said about this lesson that I learned of what's the point of being a rose if no one ever sees you, if no one ever smells you, right? What's the point of having all this magic inside of you if
we don't let it out?
You don't let it out. You don't let other people enjoy it. That was like a big lesson that I got. It's like, why are you hiding me?
Yeah. Are you ashamed of me? Are you not? You don't want people to see.
I have like little bud vases everywhere. They're so cute.
Yeah.
You can get them at like the Dollar Tree. And, just like one snip and you stick her in the bud vase, you stick her on the windowsill and you smile when you see her. And it's like,
and they bring me so much joy. And like my neighbor gave me some flowers the other day from her gardens, all these big dahlias and stuff in there.
Oh, yeah.
Now they have since they're done. And I'm like, I can't bring myself to throw them in the trash. And I'm like, I need to go bring them out back into the woods.
Put them out back. Yeah.
Yep. And so I do try to do that with pretty much all things that I can kind of have recycled, reclaimed by her. But the other thing that came up for me with the rose too is worthiness of like me being worthy of taking that and like honoring the gift and being worthy enough to receive that gift to say like, wow, you grew this beauty. I am going to receive that.
The magic of receiving, right? Receiving is a hard lesson for me. Like I have no problem taking care of you.
Yep.
But like receiving something back, it's like, why do I have a hard time with that? And I think, working, when people think about earth magic, there is a lot of focus on, dude, there's so much to go into what the ash tree is and the hawthorn and all these, but basically it's the closest portal. And I think even if you never get a name from a plant, even if you never have this experience, all of these things, if you allow yourself to be quiet and sit with, it's like, oh, I'm having a hard time with receiving. Thank you so much for that message. Oh, I'm having a hard time with boundaries. I'm having a hard time with claiming my space. I'm having a hard time with like whatever, being present, showing up and watering and doing all of that kind of stuff and right, following through. How many projects do I let fall to the side or whatever? That's a lot. That to me, like I said, is that earth magic. It's where I get lessons from the divine on just guidance from Mother Earth, my mother, to really push me through and help me with like guiding me along this journey.
Yeah.
And when it comes to that rose bush, we've had this conversation, but I would go sit out there with her with a cup of tea and be like, I'm having such a hard time cutting you down.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, I would probably cry, but like sit there, let the moon shine and be like, I wonder why that is. And just, breathe and see what comes up and journal next to her.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then I bet she would love if like a little leaf was on that page where you journaled. And when you look, she'll be like, I gave you that message. Mom, it was me. I told you so. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's very Rose of like, I told you, remember, I'm the one who gave you that kind of thing. Very diva. So maybe you start with just putting a leaf nice and pressed in your journal where it's like, thank you for that message.
Yeah. Oh, that's like such good practical wisdom, which I always like to end on something practical that you would share, which I feel like you've already given us so much of, just taking some time and honoring and sitting with and seeing what lessons, but anything else you would say. I actually read recently that plants like to be in your home in threes, like groups of three, I guess for like community or
3 is a pretty divine number. Yeah.
So just, if you're going to have a plant somewhere, try and have 3, in that room, in that space. So I don't know, maybe they don't feel lonely. I don't know.
I think, when I think of 3, I think of the 3 in tarot, and it's always relationship. It's like working together, right? It's like the fruits of it's like this coming together and making things happen. We had the vision, we made the choice, and now we're doing the work. So I think having that 3 around is very much that, the work. Yeah. I love that. I've never heard that. So thank you. I got a very lonely plant over in my window. So I'm going to have to get her some friends, but I love practical.
Mm-hmm.
That is why I like earth wisdom. I'm not interested in very dramatic, ornate, long rituals and all of, there's a place for that. Like I said, I'm raised Catholic. I love a mass. I cry every year at Christmas Eve mass. I'm here for that. I love a good ritual. We do that Serpent and Dove. We have ritual all the time. But when it comes to practicality, for me, my magic cannot be mental. It has to come down here. For me, mental magic, mental results. Like I'm not interested in like traveling and things like that. Well, I am in the earth. Right, going in the roots of the tree. But the earth is a very practical, grounded, gentle teacher, even when she's not, right? When things are off balance, hurricanes, tornadoes, things like that. But even that's a lesson, right? That's an imbalance of air and water, of thought and emotion. This is what happens when they're not cohesive, right? It's always a lesson that's very relatable and practical because we are part of the earth. Of course, her lessons would make sense to us. We are going to be buried in the soil. Yeah. So we are of the earth, right? So her lessons are always practical, but you got to be quiet and present in order to hear them. Yeah.
Spend time outside. Are you always like barefoot when you're outside?
No, but
no? Okay.
I garden without garden gloves, and my husband gives me crap about that all the time because if you could see my cuticles, and I'm always like in bed, I'm putting like just straight cocoa butter on them, and there's like cuts everywhere, and my cuticles are a mess. My nails always look like they have dirt underneath them. I like my hands in the soil.
Yeah.
So I don't want my feet touching anything, and that is my boundary.
So interesting, which I see like when I go outside, I try so hard of like, this is my opportunity to ground, but also thinking about your hands are grounding when they're in the
Yeah,
soil and they're touching things. So you're already, in my mind, I think grounding feet.
you're supposed to. And that's the picture that you see. And that's another thing. I don't like the way that the grass feels on my feet. I just don't like it. I don't like my feet being dirty. I don't ever have my feet out, even in my house. Like I always have socks on. That's a thing. I'll journal on it later, whatever. But Um, right? And
Yeah.
I could have forced myself to ground with my feet and hated it. And
Uh-huh.
it was a chore and I didn't really want to be there. And ugh, I don't like it. I got to wash my feet now. It's like, ugh, like I'm like tiptoeing around the house. Or I could have been like, I don't like that. I'm going to find a different way to touch the ground. And I just stuck my
Yeah.
hands in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honoring yourself.
Finding your way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honor. It's all the boundaries and you
Hmm.
being allowed to do that, which is
Yeah.
the lesson of you don't have to do it. Just like all these things, like someone else has told you or how you
Yeah.
think it has to be done, find your way.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the
So,
earth
so beautiful.
definitely shows us that with all her different faces. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Thank
good.
you for this conversation. Oh my gosh, so beautiful, so heart-opening. I learned so much. I know everyone will as well. And I also wanted to share, and I've said this to you, the emails that you send out,
Okay.
which we'll put a link to that because all the wisdom, like all the things you've talked about here, the practicality of how you see things going on in the world and how you bring it down to this very grounded, earthly plane of okay, big picture, there's these things going on. How does it call us to come back to ourselves, to what is going on in the day to day? How can we look at what's going on and get the messages, which has been like this whole episode around how can we receive those messages? How are they showing up for us in our lives? And when I read your emails, like I feel really seen and cared for. Like I feel like you're looking out for all of us in those messages that you share and make things feel really easily accessible. Like you take things that are intimidating, like sometimes with the tarot and something that might feel dark and like edgy and oh my gosh, this is intimidating. And you bring it into a really practical, unintimidating, very applicable way that I feel like you can receive the information. And so I want to make sure I acknowledge that and we'll share that
Well, thank
your
you.
website and everything in the show notes and on our website with all the resources. And then, of course, also make sure that we share the work you do at the Serpent and the Dove with circles. You have all these beautiful retreats that you're doing where you do a couple a year. And your next one,
We're doing Sedona in April and we're doing New Orleans in October
okay,
2026. The retreats really go into, right, this idea that witchcraft is local, magic is local. There are different flavors all over the world, right? Just like
yeah,
there's different plants in different climates. And we like to go to these places and feel that magic of the earth there, right? The magic in Sedona of the vortexes and the portals and the indigenous that we're going to be meeting with out there, being taught from a completely different culture and space and energy and spirits about how to be in the earth responsibly and the messages that we learn from there and bringing in all of that higher wisdom aspect and then moving to New Orleans where this soil that is rich with violence and love and oppression and salvation and reckoning and this very Catholic area, mixed with traditional African religions bringing us voodoo. Right. That's a very different soil than the soil that I live in New Jersey.
yeah,
And, to think I can read about that in a book and understand it, you got to go stick your hands in the soil. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I
That's
love
what you
that.
do.
So we will share all of that. And my hope is at some point I get to join you on one of these because
Yes.
I can only imagine all the magic that comes in during those times and trips away. So,
They're beautiful. Like we create this space for you to stop and be present and be
yep.
quiet and immerse yourself in it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I feel like I can already feel my nervous system calming just thinking about that. And like, I need that in my life. Well, thank you. This
Yeah.
has been,
Thank you.
such a wonderful conversation. I'm really grateful. Thank you for everything you shared. And for everyone out there listening, I know something in this episode resonated, and we always love to hear any feedback, anything you want to share. So please feel free to let us know. And I'd love to know anyone else's, how they find plant
Yeah.
magic. And if they have anything that they work with that they want to share, I would love to hear it. So please feel free to reach out. So until next time, thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your precious day to listen to our podcast. If this episode resonated with you, we would love for you to share it with someone you love. That would mean the world to us. Also, if you feel called, please follow our show so you will know when a new episode drops. If you want to go one step further, you can even rate this episode as it allows our podcast to find its way to others. Lastly, we've done our best to share resources that you might find helpful in the show notes, whether that's a book recommendation or a website we referenced during the episode, a free resource, or more information on a guest who took their time to speak with us and share their knowledge. We would love for you to support their work too. You can find more information on our podcast website at becomingspiritual.me. We love you and can't wait for you to hear the next episode. Until then, know you have a place where you are welcome and you are loved. Welcome home.